Welcome to this video, and today we're going to show you how to install Ubuntu 14.04 on your hard drive on your PC. Now, this is not a dual boot, this is a clean install on the hard drive with the only operating system being Ubuntu Linux. So how do you do this? First of all, you need a Ubuntu image file that you either put on a DVD or on a USB key. In my test here of installing Ubuntu, I've put it on a thumb drive, a bootable thumb drive. If you wonder how you can do that, I have a video on the channel showing you how to create a bootable thumb drive with Ubuntu. It is much faster to install from a USB key than from a DVD, but it works fine on both. After you do that, you put either the DVD or the thumb drive on your computer. You choose the correct boot. If you have a DVD, of course, you will want to boot from the CD DVD drive. If you have a thumb drive or USB key, you will click USB and press enter. You will come to this window here that asks you what you want to do. Of course, if you don't know for sure that you want to use Ubuntu, you'll want to try Ubuntu without installing the first option. Here we will click install Ubuntu and we will press enter. We will show you all the steps on how to install the Ubuntu distribution. Ubuntu being one of the most popular Linux distributions around. It is quite easy to really install, basically, if you just follow the instructions. It is a great distribution to use on older machines. If you have a Core 2 machine, or one of those, an older machine that's lying around doing nothing, that could be very, very interesting. One thing that I do recommend if you want to install Ubuntu is to actually connect yourself to your wireless network right away when you are installing, because this will let Ubuntu download all the latest packages that it needs for updating, and will ensure that you have the optimum install on your computer. So Ubuntu. First thing that you'll choose is the language of your distribution. I'll choose English and click continue. Now it will give you recommendations, say at least 6.5 gigabyte available disk space, plug into a power source, connected to the internet. I will add download updates while installing. I will also add install this third-party software, which is Fluendo MP3 plugin, including MPEG Layer 3, because if you don't do that, you will miss out on some of the functions of Ubuntu, especially when listening to music. You click continue. As you see, it's a pretty straightforward install when you do your Ubuntu. Keep in mind that if you use a DVD to install Ubuntu, you will probably find that it's a little longer, takes a little more time. Now, options of the install disk are erase disk and install Ubuntu, which will delete everything on your drive. Or you can choose something else. Something else will let you resize partition and do a dual boot install, keeping, for example, if you have a Windows machine, you'll be able to keep Windows and install the Ubuntu side by side. That's another type of install if you want to continue using a Windows and have the Linux possibility. In this case, I am doing a full install, so I will erase disk and install Ubuntu and click the Install Now button. As you've seen, you can encrypt the Ubuntu install. If you want to have full security, it will encrypt the files. You choose the city where you are on a map. This will let you choose whatever city you want and click continue. You will choose your keyboard layout. So depending on the country where you are, you might want to change the layout to have a certain layout that's specific to your country. So there's a lot, there's English US, but you have English, different types of English keyboards depending on the country where you are. So depending on where you are, you'll choose the English distribution of the keyboard that you want. You can, of course, even though the install is in English, for example, you can choose a different keyboard also. For example, here I will actually go to install if it's available. It's not available, so there's no English Canada in this case, so I will use English US and keep English US and click continue. You can also click detect keyboard layout. Sometimes it will detect and use the keyboard, the proper keyboard by itself. And then you click continue. Now you need a username in your Ubuntu install. So here I will use my username, TechGuyMTL. You will need a password. So I will put a very small password. Now keep in mind that it says weak password here. If you are the only one using your computer, it's not really a major problem. But if your Linux distribution, if you encrypt files, if everything needs to be very secure, then having a very complex password is a good thing. Now I am the only one using this computer, so I don't want to require my password. I will click log in automatically. But if you don't want anyone else to see what you are doing, you will click require my password to log in. And if you want to really make things safe, you click encrypt my own folder, which means that if somebody steals your computer, nobody can see the files that you had in your own folder, which is a good option. But don't lose your password, because if you lose your password and you encrypt your own folder, there will be absolutely no way of getting the files back. Click continue. And now this is the part where Ubuntu is doing the major install on your hard drive. Now on most computer, Ubuntu is pretty good at the install. It installs pretty much every drivers that are needed to run the computer. But after installing Ubuntu on many machines, there are machines that are more of a problem than others. For example, I've noticed that a Dell machine often has problems with drivers. Why? Because a lot of the computers, Dell has is special in a way because it does sometimes have its own hardware on laptops and desktops. So what happens is that if it's the case, what's happening is that these Dell hardware don't have drivers in Ubuntu or in most Linux distributions, and because they are proprietary, what we call proprietary means that they are owned by Dell. Now there are ways to work around this. If for some reason your laptop is missing some drivers, there are possibilities to sometimes find drivers for Linux made by users. One thing that is very important is that users, the Linux distributions themselves have a common license agreement that specify that anybody out there that creates a piece of software, let's say for example you have no Wi-Fi and there's no Wi-Fi drivers. If you program a Wi-Fi driver, or if somebody else programs a Wi-Fi driver for your machine, the Linux terms of agreement say that you need and you have to share this with the community, to share this with everybody else. So I think that's a very nice way of doing things, because it lets everybody, share their knowledge. And it is always cool to know that somebody else somewhere that has the skills that, some of us don't have. I personally don't have any programming skills. And by having this way of doing things, well, somebody somewhere with programming skills and maybe the same computer or the same hardware that you have will have done a driver to make things work on your computer. So it's pretty cool for that. If some of the drivers are missing, sometimes you can, wait a bit, see if somebody created a driver and maybe it could be added to a future update in Ubuntu. But one thing for sure, before you do this full install like I'm showing you here, make sure that you try Ubuntu, just boot and try Ubuntu without installing it, because you can really use it. Just look on my channel, I show you how to use it. It's very simple. You simply boot from your DVD or thumb drive and choose the first option, which is try Ubuntu before installing. So like that, you know already if you have the major drivers of your machine. This machine that I'm installing on is a Core i3 Toshiba computer, and amazingly, pretty much every Linux distributions have all the drivers, video drivers, Wi-Fi, Ethernet, sound, everything is there and works perfectly, which is quite cool, because there are some problems sometimes with Linux distributions and you don't really know if you'll be able to have it working, which is always a little bummer, a little down. What's the required, or what is the most important thing to know about Ubuntu or on the install is that I probably would not install this on something older than, let's say, a Pentium 4 computer. If you have enough RAM, memory, and power, there are chances that Ubuntu might work on a Pentium 4, but my tests that I've done on the install is that Pentium 4 or older machines usually aren't very good with the latest versions. What you could do, if you do have an older computer, why not download and find an older copy? This is version 14.04, but this version was made in 2014, was released in 2014. But if you have an old computer, maybe finding version 12 or 13 or even an older version might actually be a good idea. Ubuntu does carry a certain amount of user help and updates for a certain amount of years. And Ubuntu has basically two distributions usually that they have. They have one that is called Ubuntu, and it has LTS next to it. If you see Ubuntu and LTS, LTS means long-term support. It means that they have support for many years for that version of Ubuntu. And basically what they do is when they release versions with LTS, long-term support, and in between they release versions that are regular versions that don't carry that long-term support, meaning that after a year and a half, you already don't have any more support. So if you're looking for something solid that will run for many years, try to choose the long-term support versions of the Ubuntu distributions. I don't remember, but I think Ubuntu 14 is supported for at least something like three or 4 years. But what's interesting with Ubuntu is that, when there's a new version, you can always just download the new image file and install the new version of the Ubuntu. Another great piece of information about Ubuntu is, of course, going to the Ubuntu website. Ubuntu website has a lot of forums, a lot of spaces where you can get help if you need help. There is full instructions and manuals on how to use Ubuntu, and so that's also a great place to go to find out and use Linux. Ubuntu has one big advantage, is that for the common user, someone that's not very good with computers, and that might come from Windows or maybe a Mac, it's one of the easiest distributions to use. So for someone that has pretty much zero knowledge, once it's set up for you, it's quite easy to actually use, as it is supported by a lot of different pieces of software. So and the basics of Ubuntu when it's installed are already quite good, so you have very little tweaking and very little updates of drivers and stuff to do, really. The only thing you'll see is that, from time to time, a few times a week, you'll see that updates are available. It's going to ask you to install them. Also, in Ubuntu 14, they now have a kind of an app store, and that also simplifies the way that you install software in Linux. One of the biggest problems in Linux, and it's always been pretty much a big problem, is installing software and drivers. It's not always easy, and some of the distributions are so complex on how to install that a lot of people get lost while they're using it. Even if it's just to try it out, I think it's cool and it's a nice thing to try, and just go around a Linux distribution, watching different Linux versions, seeing the difference. But actually this channel is a good channel for that, as you will see many different versions of Linux, and hopefully you can maybe make your mind by watching my videos on which version you would like to have, which distribution. Now, I'm mentioning distributions because this is how they call the different Linux versions. For example, there's OpenSUSE, S-U-S-E. There's Ubuntu. What do we have? We have Aurora. We have Red Hat Linux. And so many more versions that I've actually downloaded and will be showing off on this channel from in the coming weeks. I'll try to go through as many versions, as many distributions as possible. Each distribution has its own positive points and negative points, and so some are better than others. It all depends on what you're looking for. Most Linux distributions, including Ubuntu, are very stable. I did use Ubuntu for a while, maybe a couple of months, pretty intensively, and I must say that I rarely ran into problems. Most of the problems that pretty much every user will have is more on the side of upgrading certain modules or going to the internet, and they're going to say, well, you need Flash Player that might not be installed on some versions, and you'll need to get some equivalent of Flash Player or stuff like that. But usually it's pretty good, and most distributions come with Firefox as a standard browser, which is already a very well-known browser, even on the PC world. So we are still on the install of Ubuntu. As you see here, it's going fine. It's done more than 80% of the install, as you see the progress bar at the bottom. And it is much longer on DVD. I've installed Ubuntu 14 via a DVD drive, and it's probably I would say at least 3 to 4 times longer to install Ubuntu from a DVD drive than it is from a USB drive. That's why I always say that a thumb drive is the best way to install not only Ubuntu, but also any operating system. It is so much faster from a thumb drive, even in Windows, that it's a must. And what's nice about this is the fact that a lot of computers today actually don't even have DVD or CD drives. So what's cool about that is that if you don't have a DVD drive on your computer, well, you know, it doesn't matter. You can install using a USB key, which works very well. If you are doing the install, or even if you're just trying it out, look for other videos on the channel. I will have a bunch of videos that will help you go through the different features of Ubuntu and show you how it works. Now it says installation complete, need to restart. You'll click the restart button, the restart now. And normally you will finally have Ubuntu as your main operating system on your computer. If you're wondering if Ubuntu needs any type of antivirus, it's a little bit like a Mac. I don't usually recommend any antivirus software for Ubuntu because it is a very secure system, and it is secure mostly because of the very small portion of users that are actually using Ubuntu or any Linux distributions. So, you know, the pirate that wants to write a virus will write it more for a Windows machine because it's the majority of users, more than, you know, a Linux machine. Pretty much the same thing that happens for Apple Macs. The reason why there aren't many viruses is not because it's so secure, it's because of the numbers. There's not a lot of Macs out there. It's not even 10% of computers around the world. So, you know, a pirate or a hacker will want to write a virus to infect the maximum amount of computers, and that's why they actually do it for Windows, because Windows runs almost 90% of the computers. And here we are, Ubuntu installed, and we are now booted in the Ubuntu operating system. So you see, it's as easy as that. I'm connected to the internet. I can actually go, if I click Firefox, I will of course have Firefox browser open up a page. And here we are, the Ubuntu Google page. So hope that it went as well for you to install Ubuntu 14.04. If you have any comments or questions, please let us know. If you have a problem of some sort, let us know. We'll try to help you if possible. And remember that the Ubuntu forums are very good to get help. There's the Ubuntu community, where you really have a lot of help on the Ubuntu operating system. If you enjoy Linux, if you're planning to start using Linux, if you are already using Linux, why not subscribe and go through my videos? And if you subscribe, you'll be also notified when there's new videos online, which is always cool. And we'll try to post videos pretty much every week, and also we'll really have a ton of different Linux versions and distributions, so you'll see all versions of Linux, or the most versions of Linux as possible. So hope that you enjoy our videos and that you will come back to our Linux channel. Bye bye.